Hello, everybody. I am Dick.
And I'm Jay.
And this is Bad Science Fiction Read Poorly. For all of you who are tuning in for the first time, every week we select several elements of a science fiction story. We pick them randomly, and then we spend only 4 hours writing about them. We come back together on the air, and then we read it for each other.
Without rehearsals.
As you can obviously tell.
Yeah, it's all live. All right, so what we're going to be doing here today is we had some discussion, and we're thinking about making some changes to how we're doing things.
And I think we're probably going to make changes every single week because indecisive.
Well, absolutely. I mean, come on. It's more fun that way, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So, we were thinking about doing, if I remember correctly, the same year, or was it same genre?
So what my thought is we're going to do, to add an element of randomness in our program, we have to have one element that's the same between both stories that we're writing. So in order to pick that, my thought was we could flip a coin. If it's heads, then we're going to write about the same time, the same year. If it's tails, then we'll write the same genre, just so we can have some continuity in the episode.
Do you have a coin?
I have a coin right here. That's what I was showing you in this nifty little camera.
Ha ha! All right. Well, let's go ahead and flip the coin and see what we got.
Head is years. Tails is, genre. Here we go. And up, down, catch. And we are tails. So we're going to write the same genre story.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So that's going to be fun.
Okay. So I figure that since we're doing the same genre, we should probably go ahead and pick that one first. Sound good?
Let's pick it first. So we're going to have 3 different options we're going to pick from, and we're going to have to fight over which one we both want to write about.
And, okay. Our 3 are horror drama, romantic drama, and historical fiction.
What was that first one again?
Horror.
Oh, 2 syllables. Gotcha.
Did I say something else? Is that we're gonna have to take that out of the episode?
Horror drama, romantic drama, historical fiction. I don't want to do historical fiction. I think we both did that last week.
Yeah,
so
let's not do that. Well, no, you did that last week. I did. I guess history because it was 2010.
It's 10 years ago. Okay, so I'm kind of leaning towards a horror drama.
I kind of believe it or not, I kind of agree. I don't really want to write a romantic drama today. I'm not really in that mood.
I love writing romantic dramas. Personally, it's kind of what I do in my spare time. But I think tonight is going to be about horror.
Okay.
Excellent. So who wants to go first? Jay, why don't you go first? And I'll read the random number generator that we're going to have for the year of your horror movie. Okay, you ready?
All right, ready.
The year you're going to pick. Option number 1 is 9,813.
Okay.
So way, way, way in the future. All right, let's see what the other option is. In the year 3821. It's about 2,000 years in the future.
What was the first number again? It was 98?
We should probably write that down.
Oh, gosh, yeah. We probably should. I think it was like 9813. Wasn't that it?
Sure. And if not, it's close enough. 9813.
All right.
Are you writing that down, by the way?
No, I can.
Yeah, let's write everything down because I don't remember what the previous one was.
That being said, I know what I'm going with.
What are you going with?
This last one, just by fiat of totally forgetting what we were talking about. Totally forgetting the number.
In the year 8,489.
Correct. Yep, that'll be my year.
8489. All right. So, that's your year.
Mm-hmm.
It is a horror drama from the distant future.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. So let's come up with the 10 random objects that we're going to be writing about, right?
Well, wait a minute. You've got to do your numbers.
Oh, we're going to do the numbers first? Okay, fine. Let's do my
your numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we got here. Science fiction horror. Guess I'll probably go fantasy if it's in the past, but let's see what we got.
8656.
8656. Isn't that almost exactly the year that you have?
Yeah, it would be like an odd, like, contemporary
200 years
kind of
earlier.
thing, yeah.
So maybe we should get together and I'll write my story, and then you have like the part 2, 200 years after it.
Well,
No, that would be terrible.
Yeah,
Okay,
it would be.
so we need to write this. We need to write this down. 8656 is an option.
All right, 1 second.
Oh, yours is actually 200 years before mine. Okay.
Ah.
8656. What's the other option we have? 5123. I can remember that because it's 5123. I'm going to lean towards that because it's in the future, but it's just a couple millennia. I could kind of see something going on then. Okay, what's the third option? Ooh, 4016. You know what? I'm going to pick that. 4016, 2,000 years in the future. 4016. A horror movie. All right.
Horror
what's
story.
next?
Horror science fiction story.
That's what I meant. Horror science fiction story.
Here's the thing. I want us to choose from less things.
Oh, choose from less things.
Yes, we had 10 last time, then we picked 3. I like 3, but I don't like 10. I like the idea of maybe choosing between 5. That way we get hemmed in with, we don't have as many, we don't have the potential for many good choices.
Well, if you're going to double down on, why don't I just double down on what you're saying, and why don't we just have 4 options?
Ooh.
We have to write out of 3 out of the 4, so we can't have any preconceived notions on the story we're going to write, because we're going to have, it's going to force us to write something about something.
Yes, absolutely.
Here we go. Yeah, let's do 3 out of 4. All right. Exquisite stamps. And if I'm looking at that guy's chin, I think that's a picture of John Lennon.
Not John Lennon. That's another kind of Lennon, and you can tell by the Cyrillic up in the left corner.
Okay, so that's what
It's
makes
the other
it
Lennon.
exquisite. The other Lennon. All right. Now, the second option are old lighting items. And I think what it means by is like candles or lamps.
Yeah.
Old
Yeah,
lighting
okay.
items. Now, the third is an opened English book.
So an open
Now,
book.
it's either a book that's written in English or it's a textbook of an English course. I think you can just pick whichever one you want it to be.
Okay.
An open book that's in English. So depending on how far into the future your story is, that actually might be a thing.
What about the Turabian, what is it? The Turabian Manual for Style.
It's an English book, yes.
Okay. I was saying, like, you're talking about textbook. I mean, that's not,
Well, I'm thinking of like an English book that people can't read. I'm actually thinking of the movie Zardoz.
Oh,
Which
okay, got
Don't
it.
necessarily want to ruin that for anybody, so if you haven't seen it, go for it. It's
And yet
a,
you
it's a
did.
great movie about a book. I didn't tell you what the book was about. A book is very central to the movie.
Yeah, but come
Didn't
on.
ruin
Now
it.
everyone's going to be literally watching that. People who haven't watched it just be watching it looking for the book.
The reveals at the end, so you have no idea what the book's about.
Yeah, but again,
Just saying.
Spoiler
alert.
All right, fine.
The movie Zardoz has something to do with the book.
Well, it's also a movie. Yeah, it's also a movie from like 1975. So I don't think that spoilers are necessarily necessary.
I mean, come on. I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, you really should. And the fourth option. So let's go over the first 3.
I would disagree
Exquisite
with the you
stamps.
should, but
Old-fashioned lighting items.
Mm-hmm.
An open book that's written in English, or it's about writing in English, like Turabian.
Yes.
And then the last option is a chic gift box.
All right. So you know what? I'm gonna have.
Which one are you not gonna include?
Oh yeah, the one I'm not gonna include is the old lighting stuff.
Really? Jeez, that would have been my first guess.
All right, so I'm going with the exquisite stamps.
Exquisite stamps. You better not write an entire horror movie about stamps.
Why not?
If you could pull it off, actually, that would be very impressive. Exquisite stamps. Exquisite stamps. An opened English book and a chic gift box.
A chic gift box.
What makes that gift box chic?
Well, I would say that it has to be a fancy, ornate covering, maybe even a fancy, ornate way of opening the box.
Really? Oh, you mean in the packaging
Yeah.
To open the packaging has to be ornate. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not like the movie Seven or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What's in the? Yeah, okay, fine.
What's in the box?
By
I'm
the
not
way,
gonna
I
ruin it.
know what it is. I know the movie. I have not seen it, but I know that. Which,
Oh,
of course,
come on.
literally makes everybody just immediately palm face. And I think what we're going to find out is that
You're gonna have to watch
I'm
the
not
movie.
I'm not as pop or even as science fiction.
Aficionado?
Yeah,
What are you doing writing science fiction if you haven't been reading books and watching the movies? All
but
right.
it's a fun exercise.
So we have a horror movie about exquisite stamps, a book in English.
Why do you keep saying a
chic
horror
gift
movie? It's a
box.
horror story.
Because I kind of, when I write stories, I think of the movies. It's terrible
okay, that's cool.
to do that, but.
All right, whatever.
And I noticed something after listening to last week's episode. I said something that I actually don't agree with.
Uh-oh.
I said that every story has to have a point that means something.
Uh-oh.
And thinking about that, of course it doesn't. I mean, we've all read Twilight.
Again, no, I have not read Twilight.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So it doesn't actually have to have a moral or a point to the story. It's just that sometimes I feel like it should. So don't worry, I'm not going to be all preachy on all the writing that I'm going to do.
So you're going to go for
speaking of preachy.
So you're going to go for like an Oscar Wildean all art is useless.
Oh, my word. That's not at all what Oscar Wilde meant when he said that.
I know.
So what items do I have 2,000 years in the future?
An Apple flat iPad.
As opposed to a rounded Apple iPad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A neat and clean bed.
Okay, a clean bed. I can write something that can be a central point. All right.
Old hairdressing products.
Old hairdressing products. What does that actually mean?
Well, if it's product, then it's not
Okay.
like the tools, right? So it would be like...
So it's like gel.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So what are we talking? What was that hair wax that they used in that movie where they sang a bunch of bluegrass? Oh brother, where art thou? Dapper Dan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, old
Never seen that
hairdressing
movie.
or hair tonic. Jay, how can you haven't seen a single movie I've referenced other than Zardoz?
Yeah, exactly. I have seen bits and pieces, and I want to say like a class I was in once in like high school played "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," but like
You watched that movie in high school? How old am I? Oh, geez. Okay, so to
Yeah.
recap, what have we picked so far?
Okay, so far we have Apple flat iPad, a neat and clean bed, and old hairdressing products.
Okay, I can see either Dapper Dan or that tonic that's green that has oil in it. You shake it and you like sprinkle it on your head. I used to use that when I was a kid because I thought I was like a hipster before it was a thing.
Oh,
All right,
no.
I'll have to look that up. All right, so what's our last one?
Are you ready?
Okay.
Flag of the United States of America.
An American flag. All right. So as much as it says Apple flat iPad, and I totally want everybody to be like, why is this iPad flat? Have you ever seen one that's flat? I mean, everybody uses the rounded one these days. As much as I want to make that joke, that's only going to be good for a bit.
Yeah, that's a line, man. Yeah.
Horror movie from the future that involves a neat and clean bed, old hairdressing products, and a flag of the United States.
Okay.
I am going to... Oh, I need to pick one.
I guess you need to pick 3.
I'm going to pick... The 3 I'm going to pick... Can you click the list again? I didn't read them. Okay. I'm going to pick the neat and clean bed, the flag of the United States, and the old hairdressing products. And I already have an idea in my mind.
Old hairdressing products.
So if we're like 2,000 years in the future, like a current hairdressing product, would that be considered old?
I mean, yeah, unless like you really wanted to, I don't know, if you want to do if you want to do like a weird Star Trekian, like, where even though it's supposed to be in the future, everyone likes antique stuff from the 30s.
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that. I have a really I think I've got a plot.
Okay. I'll be honest, I got nothing right now. I got an idea. I have a general idea, but like I'm gonna think that over the next meal that I'm gonna have right after this. So that'll be fine. You okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm just the wheels are turning. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dick.
And I am Jay.
We're going to take a 3-hour break and write a story. And we're going to come right back on and we're going to read it to each other.
3-hour break?
A 4-hour break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 4-hour break. We're going to write these stories, and then we're going to jump right back on and read them to each other without any rehearsal.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye. And we're back. Thank you for joining us again for the second half of Bad Science Fiction Read Poorly. I'm Jay.
And I'm Dick.
All right, and we're going to get ready to read our stories. The 4-hour mark is up, and I'm now looking at Richard's story. But before we do that, because I just remembered, we were going to talk a little bit about what it means to write horror. So, Dick.
Yes.
Writing horror. Go.
Oh, you mean 2 syllables. Oh, I'm going to need to look over my story again. So I'll tell you, it was actually pretty difficult to write something suspenseful. I tried my best. Hopefully it worked out. But, I mean, you really kind of have to think of... they say there's only, like, very few things that motivate people. And 2 of the biggest ones are money and fear.
Okay.
So I was trying to come up with what a big motivator would be for fear. What fears that people either have to resolve, overcome, work through, things that'll prevent people from doing things, and things that will motivate people to do things they wouldn't normally do. And that's kind of what I was playing with. Don't know if I hit anything that was really in the horror category. With it, but I tried to keep up some suspense and try to keep the unknown element there the whole time. But horror is a really interesting thing to write about.
Yeah, I would agree. It's very weird and difficult to kind of, well, not difficult necessarily, but yeah, difficult is probably a good term for it.
It's difficult to do it well.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. Yeah, no, I was playing with the ideas of how to keep suspense, and I was definitely trying to keep it suspenseful and trying to kind of limit some other themes that I kind of wanted to really kind of interject into my story that didn't have to do with the genre, but definitely had to do with some of the other elements.
So that's an interesting thing that I found when I was writing was you would always want to divert from the main plot. And I think that's something that actually is okay with horror, because if you really think of the old, horror movies from the 80s, for instance, Children of the Corn, I think that's 70s if I'm not mistaken. But you have this story that you just have so much unknown element, you don't really get to the horror trope until the end. So I think it's very easy to get sidetracked, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, although at the same time, kind of one of the things I was trying to do is I wanted to provide something that was an element of mystery and suspense at the beginning, and then just what happens when by no fault of your own you're way too deep in a situation that you can't get out of.
You lie. I don't know. It's the first thing that popped into my head.
Well, yeah, but let's say that let's just say that kind of bargaining isn't in the cards. Okay,
fair enough. I think we've beaten around the bush, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. So we agreed that I would go first this time?
That doesn't matter to me. You want to go first? Go for
it.
Oh, you're going to read mine first, and I just have to sit and squirm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, already, just before we kind of read this, as I'm just kind of looking at it really quick.
I don't want a cookie. I know how to do punctuation. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
You're going to say, oh, it's not big blocks of text. And I'll be like, you can just increase the font if you don't want to squint.
Well, I'm already going to do that.
I was actually, I was thinking about that last week, and it's like, man, this is kind of hard to read on the screen. Oh, wait, I literally can just increase the font, and it's easier to read.
Yep. Yeah, I increased mine to about 14, and I also did double spacing. So I'm just going to do that to your story, if you don't mind, so I can... Are we ready?
Yes, I am ready.
The Privateer. The crack. Hank woke up to his alarm clock beeping. Why do I keep setting my alarm clock before I go to bed, he said. I'm 2 years into this 3-year cargo haul, and every morning I wake up at 7 a.m. and make my bed. Hank always had a tendency to speak his thoughts out loud. It was a trick he learned in the Merchant Marine Academy. If you don't speak for 4 years, your muscles start to wear down. So you might as well talk to yourself, or you won't be able to talk for much longer. Early on in intergalactic cargo hauling, a ship of this tonnage would have easily been crewed by 20 to 25 crew members. There is so much cargo that this is needed at the outer colonies, and with a 10-year round trip, a 1,000,000-ton haul starts to look small. Those early ships had so many problems. You needed a full maintenance staff, and with that many people, it was easy to keep from getting bored. But the expense of feeding a large crew and a decade worth of overtime made into profits. Long haulers stopped seeming romantic. You can't communicate in real time at speeds we are traveling. Betelgeuse is 528 light years away. So going super light prevents communication. We just don't, we just can't receive from the colony. Many couples who thought that 10 years of solitude, not on a crowded planet, was a luxury quickly realized that they couldn't stand each other without the social pressure to keep reproducing. Designers came up with the Junker heavy cargo hauler, 10 million tons, but based on the concept of the old Chinese sailboat with that name. This entire ship was built so it can be operated by one person. Although Hank was pretty old, he still liked taking these trips. It's a chance to get away from the crowds and be with his thoughts. The engines were self-contained, and navigation was pre-programmed to track waypoint beacons and pulsars. The computing power it needs to operate the entire ship and navigation is less than I have in my chip. That is the new entertainment system I got back on Earth that taps directly into your spinal column from the back of your neck. It is bioelectrically powered and has enough memory that I downloaded every single interactive entertainment product for the last 2,000 years. I have been mastering an old game called Donkey Kong, but it seems much simpler with neurocontrol. I can't believe humans used to operate equipment with that kind of dexterity with their hands. Enough reminiscing. Time to go back to work. Hank put on his shoes, tidied up his bed, and floated out the corridor. The sound. Hank jumps into the access corridor that is the spine of the whole ship. Instead of having to walk around the ship, you just jump into the slipstream and it takes you to your destination. One giant round-trip loop. It takes 5 miles to loop over a minute, so it does take a while. But I got used to the slow speed. Hank pipes up, I still like to inspect every cargo container every day. It takes 20 minutes, but I just don't trust the automatic controls. As good as the ship is designed, the troubleshooters are more likely to fail than the elements attached to the system. So you will have an auto system go down, never get the alert, and a hairpin leak will vent cargo container 6 months later. You never know it. Then bam, you lose a copy of the global seed bank. He arrives at container 2900 TACH. He looks inside the window, and all looks right. He turns around to jump into the slipstream, and then he hears it. Ding! The hair stands up on the back of his neck. A sound? A clang? A loose object? Impossible! This is empty space. Everything was secured right after acceleration. There's absolutely no way there are any loose objects in there. It has been 2 years making the same rounds every day. This was the first sound he heard that didn't come from the ship's speakers. He checks the manifest. The container is marked, Precision Swiss Equipment, Do Not Break Seal. That in itself is not strange at all. Many of those containers are labeled with a Do Not Break Seal marker. But those containers are usually filled so tightly that you cannot step foot into it, let alone have room for something to bang around. Hank's veins ran ice cold, and he hears 2 more soft ding, ding in rapid succession. There must be something in the container. If it was suspected a livestock container, it might make sense, but not equipment? Hank races back into the slipstream to go to the main control center. He jumps into the access corridor, and within 20 seconds, he is in the control room. The investigation. First things first, Hank said. He checked the readout of the unit 2900 TACH. Everything is normal. He pulls the circuit breaker for the entire wing, counts to 20 seconds, an eternity, and plugs it back in. The system reboots. Hank never had to reboot the system. It took forever. The computer cycled up and started checking off every storage container. One by one, this is taking forever. When the computer got to 2900 TACH, it stopped. It took a long time. And then a red X showed up on the screen. Hank was flabbergasted. He did not know what that meant. How many days as he looked at storage container readouts? He never remembered an X. Then a thought entered the back of his mind. Why did old cargo ships go back full of crews? Pirates. A fear that tickled the back of his mind all these years. What if the old stories were true and we were not alone? No, there has to be a reasonable explanation. Okay, let's check the thermal imaging scanners. He turned on the program. And he saw them, two shapes with skinny arms and legs, and big, large, bald heads on the screen. He only could see black and white readouts from the scanners going through the bulkheads, but they were plain as day. Time passed as he saw them walk slowly from one piece of equipment to another, and he started to feel something build up inside him. Rage. This was his ship, and there were right in front of his eyes were pirates. He checked the shape of the images, and they looked unfamiliar. Skinny, long appendages, narrow torso. Didn't look natural. He then had to face the unimaginable realization that he was staring at aliens. He just had a panic-stricken thought. How could they have gotten on the ship? They had no sensors or communication at faster-than-light travel. What if a ship attached and they are taking us over? These supplies are needed at the outer colonies. I have to get them back. He saw images make their way to the sealed bulkhead. I have to stop this, he thought. Hank jumped into the slipstream and within 30 seconds was at the bulkhead. He looked around and found a PFE attached to the wall. It was a piece of personal firefighting gear, but it was heavy and sharp. He picked it up and waited behind a corner. He heard scraping and electronics whirling. The bulkhead started moving. This is it, Hank thought. He picked up his PFE and turned the corner. The two aliens saw him were thin. Their skin was almost translucent, smooth-skinned and hairless. They moved the shape of their mouth at him. He knew what he had to do. He swung the PFE and stabbed them all in the head. They seemed weak, easy targets. Hank just defended the ship. He felt proud. He looked over the bodies of these aliens and saw the splatter of blood floating around the corridor. And he realized this was going to be a mess if he didn't clean it up soon. Well, he pushed the bodies back in the storage container and sealed the door. He'd find a place to put the bodies. Clean up. Yeah, I got him, Hank said, but something didn't feel right. We never found evidence of aliens, and I doubt this would be the first time we got them on camera. But what other explanation is there? The wheel started turning in his mind. What if something happened to me? Shouldn't there be at least one other person to help me out? I know I don't have a lot of work to do, but this ship is very expensive. Why not have at least one other member of the crew? Hank streamed back to his quarters. He saw his bed. And then he looked further down the corridor. Why have I never gone down this way? Hank walked down the corridor further. He looked in the bulkhead and saw another set of quarters. It was adjacent to his own. He went inside and found a neat and clean bed and a dusty nightstand. He walked over to the nightstand, found some old hair products with a thick coat of dust on them. How long does it take for dust to build on this spaceship? He took a look closer at their hair gel. This gel expired 50 years ago, in 3966. He picks up a picture on the nightstand, and he recognizes himself in the picture with a beautiful woman. What happened? He backs out of the room and races back to the access corridor. He travels down to the engines. He remembers the documents he read that said the engines are self-contained. When he arrives at the engine room, he sees a large doorway. Why would the engines have a door if it's self-contained, he thought. Every step he took towards the door filled him with an irrational fear. He backed away. If the engine room is self-contained, then it would be the best place to store the bodies of the aliens. So instead of going and opening the door, Hank fell back to the bodies of the aliens. He tied them all together to make them easier to carry, and took them all by slipstream to the engine room. He approached the engine room and pressed the button on the door. He heard a loud whooshing sound, but the door finally opened. He stepped inside. In front of him, he saw an American flag draped over a body bag. He somehow knew who it was. Damn you, I don't want to go in here again, he said out loud, realizing just then he had been in the engine room before. He dragged in the other bodies, and he looked at them closely. They had jumpsuits on. He looked closely on their shoulder, and he felt the dread overtake him. He saw an American flag on their shoulder as well. They were not aliens. They were young. When was the last time Hank saw a mirror, or even a picture? What did he remember? How long have I been up here? He looked over at the body bag, and he knew that he had to look. He pulled the flag down and opened the bag up. There, he saw the mummified remains of a beautiful girl. The girl in the picture he had just found standing beside him. She must have died 50 years earlier, but was still perfectly preserved, probably due to the vacuum of space. Hank turned on his chip. Access mission report, Hank said. All data other than historical entertainment was deleted, the chip replied. Only one file found. Hank played the file. There was nothing I could do to stop it, the video played. It was Hank as a younger man. Regina and I awoke to take our 75-year shift on the craft. Since the average lifespan is 200 years, sacrificing 75 years for humanity is an honor worth sacrificing. When we left Earth, we knew that the trip to Betelgeuse was going to take 623 years, because we could only travel 0.94 the speed of light. Regina and I would spend 75 years together looking after the ship as we traveled to our new home. You won't remember any of this, but Earth was destroyed by a supernova. The radiation burst irradiated half the planet, and the remaining half only had enough time to build this spaceship to travel to Betelgeuse, because it was traveling away from the radiation burst. A different couple would volunteer to take a 75-year shift during the journey, and when we arrived at our new colony, we would take the rest of humanity out of stasis. Well, Regina and I had a wonderful 20 years. Then one time she was looking at the engines, and a hairline fracture emerged in the outer hull. The air was sucked out, but the alarm never sounded. By the time I found her, she was dead. I tried to keep it together, but I had 55 years on my shift. I spent 5 years trying to keep going. But one day, I was in the engine room, and the leak opened up again. The alarm went off, and I almost didn't leave. I wanted to be with her again. I snapped out of it before I passed out. And when I escaped the room, I promised myself that I would reprogram the ship and my chip to think that I just had 1 more year left. When you read this file, your time will be up, and you will finally be relieved by the next couple to take your place at the helm. If you're reading this, you are relieved. I will reprogram the ship to show the correct cargo and where the crew's suspended animation chambers are stored. Hank looked at the mangled bodies of his crewmates. The pressure in the engine room started to drop. The engine room door closed, and Hank looked out the window. This will all be over soon. He then he looked up the new map of the ship. There were 22,000 people left of humanity on this ship. They were shielded by the radiation, but they would have no one to watch over them for the next 75 years. Hank stood up and walked out of the engine room. I'll seal the leak later. And that's it. That's The Privateer.
Yep, that's it. It was a good read.
Yeah, no, that was a fun story. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of little nested references in there.
I tried to nest a couple little references.
One thing I enjoy and disliked at the same time.
Okay.
Is the very early explanation of, yeah, I'm just gonna talk. I'm just gonna provide expository dialogue.
Oh, you don't like the expository dialogue?
For the purposes of this story, it worked.
Well,
But-
I mean, like
but
if you
generally-
have one person. See, there's a couple reasons I did that, and one of the things, especially saying, well, you got to speak your thoughts out loud, because I was writing this, it's like, imagine if you were the only person on a deserted ship.
Oh yeah, no. Like I said, it worked. I was a little leery at first when I was reading it. I was like, oh no, oh no,
Expository dialogue. Well, I mean,
how dare
think of it-
you flip tables?
It's like a one-man act show. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. This could all be done with only one character.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
bodies.
yeah, and in bodies, yes.
So Netflix.
Lest we
if
forget.
you're-
Lest we forget the two and the second, third, and or what is it? The first or the second, third, and fourth main characters, the bodies.
So Netflix. If you're out there looking for a show you can put on a very low budget.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Not to mention, those spacesuits, man. You could just CGI those. Those don't even have to be people.
Just
And,
put
the dead-
mannequins in them.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez, yeah.
What's
But-
that? Deep fake the faces on
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
character you want.
Oh gosh. The other thing that I'm just going to be a little bit, again, it didn't take me out of it. It was just one of those things where I was like, oh, man, alarm clock, waking up to alarm clocks. That's kind of like the way of that's kind of like the way to begin a story version of like, and then it was all a dream at the end of the story.
I was thinking it, but I was thinking more of Clerks.
Yeah, well, you're trying
Like-
to establish a routine that this person is just doing this day in, day out for 75 years. I get it, and
Actually, moreover, that it's more like Groundhog's Day, where he's actually living that same day, thinking he has a year left,
but
and he's been doing that for 50 years now. Okay.
My question is, how does Groundhog Day start? It starts in the TV studio, right?
I don't really remember, to be honest.
Funny story is neither do I. But
Okay.
I think it does, because there's that moment where he's doing the weather, and then they stop, and then, of course, they introduce the female lead after that. Because if I remember correctly, and oh my gosh, this has been so long. It's been so long since I've been able to sit and watch this movie. Like, she's, like, messing with the green screen. Or I guess it's the blue screen for that. But anyway, whatever. She's messing with the After Effects stuff. And then they talk about, well, all right, we got to do the Pugsatonic Phil thing. What?
I doubt they had Adobe back then.
How dare they not? Gosh. How dare how dare a mid-90s comedy not have Adobe software. Anyway, this is just riddled with all sorts of little references, and it was kind of a joy to read.
I wasn't trying to make them as references. I was trying to have it be I wanted to have a big reveal, and every time I did it, I was like, wait a second, that was that M. Night Shyamalan movie. I'm not going to do that one. And that's what I kept on doing each time. So that's why I wanted to have the reveal that he accidentally murdered the people that were going to save him.
Oh yeah, no, I gotcha.
So
No, I gotcha. But I'm not even talking about the main story stuff. I just mean little turns of phrase in here that are not from other places, but they're kind of have you tried turning it on and off again? He plugs the circuit breaker for the entire wing and counts 20 seconds, an eternity, and plugs it back in.
Well, the other thing
that's real life, man.
and I was also trying to put this connection of like, what is the future really like? Like, oh my word, it almost takes an entire minute to circumnavigate the ship. Do you know how long that is? Like 20 seconds?
Oh yeah, no, I gotcha.
And actually, that was kind of a little bit of a tie-in, because if this ship is supposed to be in outer space for 600 years, you're really still working with ancient technology, even though you're thinking in the future. So
yeah, and PFE, man. I almost groaned because I thought, as I was starting at "This is it," Hank thought, I thought I saw PPE, and I was like, oh, come on, current time, current thing, man. But like
personal protection
equipment.
What is the East equipment?
Yeah, same thing. It just I saw it. I was like, okay, good. Personal firefighting equipment. That's good. Okay, that's fine. So, let me see what else. Yeah, no, like a lot of this. I mean, it's really good. It's really good, and it really. I didn't have a problem reading this in a tone that I thought was the way it should have been read, if that makes sense.
I got
In
you.
other words, it was very easy to kind of glean from what you were talking about the way you wanted it to be, or the way I thought you wanted it to be phrased, which is kind of weird. It's like, yeah. But anywho.
You can actually hear the dialogue before you were reading it. Yeah. I was trying kind of hard to do that. And I think the way that I was able to get that work better is because it was a single character story. Then I could set the tone, and then you could actually kind of get into the character as you're reading it, even through the first read. And that was a little bit intentional. That part of it was a little bit intentional. So you can kind of get into his head, what he was thinking and what he was feeling. Because, again, that's kind of where the horror element of it was, where it's not, like a gory monster, who's behind the door, don't look in the box. It wasn't that kind of.
But who is behind the door?
Well, and that was well, I mean, like, who are the two aliens? Why do they look so skinny? And I probably should have prefaced that, like, he was older and fat, maybe, could have been. And then when you're in stasis, you're just barely surviving. So when you come out, but I didn't really elaborate on that aspect, which is why the crew members looked like aliens through the thermal scanners, and how he blocked a lot of, and no deeper thing in that, but I mean, you suffer a big tragedy and you have nobody to spend it with. Sometimes it's just better to block it out.
Oh yeah,
and that's it's kind of what it is. And then in the end, it's probably not the best thing to do anyway. But at the same time, what is the best thing to do if you're trapped on a ship for 50 years by yourself?
So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. If you're trapped on a ship for 75 years and you got 55 years to go, and then horrific tragedy strikes, don't worry. Bad Science Fiction Read Poorly suggests bury it. You
Deep
heard it
within
here
your
first.
psyche. Or at least have a solid contingency plan where you can call someone up and be like, yeah, your turn. Tag, you're it.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Oof. So
all within the confines of the story. All right. So we're kind of doing it a little bit differently. We're doing the talk right after the story. So let's we can do some more talking about what both of us did at the end. But let me go ahead. I'm kind of excited to read yours. I accidentally opened up the folder and I saw your title. And it's the only thing I know. And it's called An Acceptable Ratio. And immediately it piqued my interest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow up the screen just a little bit more to make it easier to read.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's ready to go. All right, here we go. An acceptable ratio. Bob, everyone thinks the future was going to be so fantastic. Oh, come on, man. Stow it already. Robert knew his protest was in vain and only served as a conversational speed bump. All I'm trying to say, Bob, is that we was promised certain things. All right, what kind of things were we promised, George? Robert was rolling his eyes from behind the steering wheel. Everyone says we're gonna get put out of a job. They say all that robots are gonna be everywheres. They said that solar power, fusion, and all that is gonna replace my diesel truck and that coal plant down the road. All that flying cars to Mars nonsense? We've been talking about the Flash Gordon stuff since the 1900s. Robert came to a stoplight, taking a moment to look over and nod at his colleague in the passenger seat. What does all that mean, George? The light turned. Robert depressed the accelerator. It means that here we are, in the year of our Lord, 89, expecting to be flying to Mars with robots, teaching my kids about quadratic equations or whatevs. And here I am, still trying to convince my boss I need 2 weeks in Hawaii with the missus, even though my modest fortune would be lucky to reserve a park bench down the block. And trying to convince my in-laws that my kids aren't little sociopaths, hell-bent on driving them insane, so I can do it. George leaned over on the car door with his elbow, his hand holding his chin. Could always sail over, George. Robert decided it was better to play into it than to tune George out. Then I'd have to learn to sail. I can't even train robots to do that neither. It's a shame you could go to Florida. Robert made a gentle left-hand turn. They were in a residential area. It was easy to forget to look for the house numbers. It took so long to pass the next one that it could easily lose track. We went there last year. People kept telling us it's going to stink or whatevs in 20 years, and we went to try to enjoy it. Flamingos, gators, and manatees. Manatees, Robert corrected. Now trying to look for the right house. Yeah, those big cow-looking things. Wasting my time, and I still got the insect bites to prove it. Well, we're here. Robert pressed the brakes, blocking in a driveway. Several of Robert and George's colleagues were there. Lights flashing, the driveway taped off to onlookers. I bet we don't get overtime for this. George opened the door, pulling out a pad of paper and pen and his overcoat as he removed himself from the car. Shut up, George. Robert turned the key and pressed the door and joined George walking up the driveway. When God comes down to judge us, he'll have to lead with that if he wants to get a word in. Two men walked into the house, immediately reaching a foul odor upon the door. What's that? Smells like rotten meat, George said, coughing and covering his face with a handkerchief. We don't know, sir, but we've got another one. Follow me to the study, said one of the officers. George and Bob followed him to the study. Looks like somebody has poor taste in paint. Robert looked over at George. That's not paint. That's not paint, George replied, lightly dabbing his handkerchief on the wall, pulling blood away and exposing a green paint scheme and placing it in a bag. Bob failed to respond, looking in horror towards the wall behind the desk. What on earth? George managed to stammer out. Who could do this? Robert shook his head. 5 feet up the wall, there was a skeleton, fused to the wall at the spine, slightly stumped over. On the table sat a cardboard box. Packing foam was all over the desk. Another one. Last two weren't nearly this bad. Robert approached the desk to look inside the cardboard box. Yeah, it's another one, all right. George was already removing a book from the box. Same Bible, I would imagine, Robert asked. Right down to the same wooden box. George held the book in one hand, the box in the other. It looks like something I would put expensive jewelry in to take to my wife, said one of the officers, taking pictures of the scene. Yeah, it's sort of a chic little murder box, answered Robert. The only thing that could get blood on the walls like this is an explosion, but we would certainly see more damage. George was now examining the skeleton. The bones were melted to the wall. What kind of heat melts bone but doesn't destroy anything else? It's just bizarre. George put his pen between a section of bone and the wall, unsuccessfully attempting to pry the skeleton from the wall. There's nothing else to try, really. Bring the materials to our office. We'll look at it in the morning. Robert shook his head, turning to walk out of the room. Robert and George walked to the car in silence as the forensics team finished their investigation. The boxes had been showing up at random houses in the city for the last 3 weeks. See you in the morning. Try not to complain too much about that vacation tomorrow, or we might be putting some real sleuthing to do, said an exhausted Robert in the car, pulling away as George walked to his house. The next morning, George said goodbye to his wife, walking right out to the door and nearly tripping on a package. It was a cardboard box with a stamp with some guy in a rocket ship. The exquisite stamp adorned with Cyrillic writing. Is it the stuffed gator head you ordered from Miami last year and finally making it in? Robert asked from the car. Must be. I didn't know they delivered so early. It's barely 8 in the morning. Also, I didn't think I ordered it from some guy who'd use a Russian stamp. George yelled, picking up the box and walking towards the car. Russian, said Robert. Yeah, it's Cyrillic, and they don't deliver packages this early, Robert said grimly. Nah, I can't be. Let's go to the office, and I'll show you it's got to be the gator. George sounded more like he was trying to convince himself than his partner. As the car turned the door, the box began to glow. The cardboard burst into flame, evaporating along with the packing foam, leaving the box levitating. The car had ceased to function. The box opened. There was a flash of light. Robert was the first to get up. George was groaning, trying to get up from the floor. Where are we? Robert asked George. A speaker in the wall squawked to life. I will be with you in just a moment. Please sit tight. Who's that? George said finally, standing up. I don't know, but how do we get here from my car? The door opened. Something rolled into the room on tracks. A single lens reviewed the prisoners. The pressure at the room started to fluctuate. What's the big idea, kid? Robert could not finish the statement. His skin felt like it was burning. First came boils on the skin, followed by red bursts. Robert had disintegrated right before George's eyes. You will come with me, said the being. What are you? George could barely get the words out, still in shock at the small puddle that was once Robert. You will come with me. My masters are waiting. George, trembling, followed the entity. It was clearly a robot, but the novelty of such high technology was lost on him. As they made their way down the corridors, George could see things moving, floating outside. Maybe what happened to Bob was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he took it as a threat. George thought to himself, finally starting to realize that he was in the world of mankind dreamed of. Flying cars, robots, vast solar farms in the distance, they came to a kind of lecture hall. George was in awe, eyes moving from the robot to the equipment at the stage. It looked like a chemistry lab. That will be enough, X-36. George, can you have a seat? A voice rang out into the hall. What do you want with me? George was now relaxed, sitting in a chair on the stage. A man walked out from the double door stage left. Well, George, we have a problem. You see, our world is dying. The figure took a seat opposite of George. So is mine. It's been dying for thousands of years, but, you guys seem like you're doing all right, so where's the big deal? The original sense of terror started to creep back into George's voice. You see, we spent so much time building technology, colonizing planets, and developing interstellar commerce that somewhere along the way we never realized our reproduction rates were declining. I mean, I got a wife and kids at home. I don't see how this is my problem. I mean, sure, you've got fancy flying cars and spaceships, and my wife and I argue a lot, but we love each other, George said, a wry smile creeping across the stranger's face. Yes, well, now you can contribute to thousands more children. You see, humanity's prolific spread across this arm of the galaxy has brought problems. There is simply no time for pregnancy or child-rearing. We have found a more technological solution. Well, you mean like test tube babies? I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at all, considering. But what role do you want me to play in all of this? George could feel his heart wanting to rip itself out of its chest. The sweat was becoming unbearable. There was a flash. You see, we found that by finding a parallel universe, we could breed more genetic diversity into our stock. The man stood up, walking over to a control pad. Our means of doing this is still somewhat primitive. Our council voted it's too dangerous for our citizens to participate. However, they agree 1 life for 10,000 children was too good of a ratio. Thankfully, by this time, we figured out how to move between dimensions. Your sacrifice will be honored. We thank you for your contribution, the man said, flipping a switch. There was a flash of light as George disintegrated, the particles moving up into a vacuum duct. The man walked away from the control panel. X-37, prepare the next batch of boxes. I like it. I like it.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, man.
I do apologize. It is extremely difficult to do accents when you're not really sure who's talking. You should
I know.
start
There were a
it
couple
with,
of times.
George said, blah, blah, blah. Not blah, 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 comma, blah, 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 period. Blah, 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 semicolon, blah, 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 comma, blah, 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 comma, blah, 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 period, end quote. George said.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. You did it perfectly. But I just love because the thing is that when I was writing this, like, because I was making lunch right after we had our meeting or dinner or whatever, one of those meals. Anyway, and I literally just sat there.
They're all the same these days.
Yeah, they're all the same. So I was sitting there going like, wouldn't it be fun to write a story from the perspective of like so far in the future, because that was what I had drawn, right, the timeline, but have it be pretty much now, except incredibly bitingly cynical. And I was thinking about this, this whole front end like cynical like thing about the future and all this sort of stuff. I was like, oh gosh, this is great, because I was just thinking about it. And,
so in other words, New Jersey.
Okay. But no, I was just like, it's fine. Like I was just thinking like some guy in the future, like an old detective novel. Some guy just complaining about, they said we're supposed to have these things, but where are they?
And my ulcer. I need to have like a Tums Carnival down there.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes. So,
if you drop that phrase,
Tums Festival. Yes.
Yes, you should have. It was Tums Festival?
Yeah, I even thought, it was Tums Festival. I even thought about that,
Festival.
but I was like, I don't want to draw that comparison. I want to keep it like some really, really bitingly cynical person, and then that was it.
So I really like the title, the acceptable ratio, because you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's the acceptable ratio? Because everybody talks about acceptable ratios. When one person dies, it's a tragedy. When you have, 10,000 people die, it's a ratio. You can, solidify all of that down. I like that. And immediately the horror element did kind of catch up to me, because you introduced the cynical character and then like the real character as Robert. And then all of a sudden you killed Robert.
Yes, I killed the serious one.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, is this real? What's going to happen? And then you have that the big reveal in the in the giant lecture hall, where okay, I guess this was just a dream, or this was a trick. Oh, okay, now we can go back to everybody's like, no, we're going to kill you because you're from an alternate dimension. And,
and that's the joke about the acceptable ratio, right? Because again, it's not like they're depopulating their world.
And it's not people they care about. It's people that they don't care about, so therefore they can accept that ratio.
Yes.
So it's a good story. I like the trope. And it's really funny as if, back in the 80s, I remember even asking my dad, so how long do you think it's going to be before flying cars? And my dad's just like, we're not going to get flying cars. And I was just like, wait, why not? It's like, we had flying cars back in the 50s. It's like, yeah, but why don't we use them? It's like, because the amount of technology you'll put into a flying car, you can put that same technology in a regular car, and it'll be that much better. So the concept of cars flying, that's too complicated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, and I just, the idea that they would be saying that in the year 8,400.
Because we're thinking like, flying cars, in 100 years traffic is going to be bad enough. We need flying cars. Is that 8 centuries from now? Sorry, 8 millennia from now?
Yeah.
And it's still like, you still got a diesel truck.
Yeah. And a coal power plant.
Yeah.
and like nothing has changed. You know,
do we have all of that fossil fuel still, or is it?
Well, yeah, that was my thing. Is that I was like, because I guess the whole point is that in my mind I was like, how they keep saying that, like there's always that alarmist that says, oh, we're gonna run out of oil in like 50 years, and then like that comes along and they go, yeah, but that was with our old technology. Now that we figured out how to drill down and then sideways, we can do this, that, and the other thing, or whatever, drilling technology,
or fracking.
And fracking and things like that, right? They end up saying, oh, by the way, now that we've done that, we can actually keep gasoline, keep oil going.
I can't hear the word fracking without thinking of Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, absolutely. No, it just, no. But no, like the whole idea in my brain was that, like who is to say, and I guess again, I was more thinking about just the overall image, like how everybody, had the world ending in 1999 at a certain point in fiction writing.
Or 2012 was the other one with the Mayan calendar ending.
Oh yeah. So like all that stuff, and then there's like, well, but what if just instead of number one, our technical, like our ability to improve things slowly technologically, what if we just stopped it and we just froze in place as a civilization, like
the Dark Ages?
Yeah, and then just got ridiculously like lucky, so we didn't have any like asteroids come by and kill us or any of that business, and we just sat there.
Those are just things that science fiction doesn't even discuss, and what I really like about it, because it works, because it's in an alternate reality where that could always be a possibility in a parallel planet where things just randomly stay the same. So yeah, so it worked, and you got the good tie-in at the end.
Oh yeah,
with the dystopian utopian future.
Well, because let's be real, utopia, there is, if you look at the history of utopia, quote unquote, utopian societies in the world, there's always that dark undertone.
Yeah, ancient Rome. Well, you really think about a society stemming up out of ahead of its time. It did, and then it collapsed horribly.
Yeah. And
the only reason it could maintain it was through a, what would you call that? A monopoly on violence in the area is the only reason that they could maintain that higher level of art and science.
Yeah, and it's just I'm even talking about like other like some of the weird like some of the weird commune experiences, like things like that. Like there's no matter how I guess honorable or whatever, or no matter how good your intentions are, if you pursue utopia, like that undercurrent is just basically just going to devour it.
There's a saying that a true commune, a true communist society, and not referring to Soviet true communism, but where you have a group of people who have all volunteered to work together without having any external pressures. They say that no society like that has ever survived the 3 generations after its founding. Because you can think of groups like there were lots of groups called the Brethren in Pennsylvania, the like Quakers or Shakers or those groups, but they had to come up with non-communist ways. And if you take the Shakers, for instance, that it's not a pure communal experience still, because they work and make money, but there are a lot of religious groups like what you're saying that have tried to come up with, and not cults, like actual towns that decide, okay, we're all going to work together and we're going to be equal, and they'll work through the first generation because those people have chosen to live that life. But as you get to successive generations, by the time you hit the 3rd generation, you have just a group of people who are forced into that lifestyle instead of choosing it.
Yep. And also, by the way, one of the themes I like in both of our stories is the idea that humanity would expand so far out that we really wouldn't understand how the logistics exactly work.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the idea that, 70, your family going, or a couple piloting a ship for 75 years, and then, like, because humanity just doesn't have time, so you actually have to cut down on crews, and going the other way, and then of course going to basically blunt, like, so hey, look, all of these things that we've got, our reproduction rates are just bad, so we've decided to do things more technologically, and oh, by the way, we're just going to be using your genetic material, and we can get about 10,000 children out of them. So, have fun.
But do you really need to have that much children if you're already spread out that much? I mean, like, it's like
maybe
inverse
not.
It's like the inverse of overpopulation. Like the only
But
reason you'd need.
But if they're not reproducing like normal human beings, because of the strain on society of keeping an intergalactic system like this going, then you'd literally just okay, here is your state apportioned child. Boom, here you go. Or no time for child rearing, because again, you are trying to keep this little empire that they've built, this little intergalactic empire, which I almost used at the end of the story. I was like, man, it's
too Star Warsy.
Well, and it's not even too Star Warsy. It's more like too, I guess, I don't even want to say sends the wrong idea, but sends the wrong idea, and it's a loaded word.
Well, here's the other thing, thinking about that concept. So you have overpopulation is going to be the thing that makes you expand. Why expand if you have reduced population? Because you don't need to expand.
Well, because, what else is out there, man? It's
so
a society that's the inverse. It's the society
so the
that's
society
the inverse
is expand, and then once you get there, you're like, you build the solar farms and all this other stuff, and then you have nothing else to do, but like, no people, no problems. I mean, like, you think about it, I mean, like, what is the actual issue? Well, the issue might be that you don't have enough workers to supply the infrastructure.
Well, yeah, because that's, that is, again, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
But you got the robots to do the work, so you don't need the people to do the work.
Yeah, but I mean, even in their hyper-advanced society, you still can't get robots to do all the things. Someone's got to teach quadratic equations.
Yeah, robots. I mean, geez, that's what they're doing today.
I know. I just that.
But maybe the other side of it is and there's a lot of science fiction on this one that in the future, like, raising a kid is disgusting. So that's where the technology comes in, and because nobody wants to have kids, but okay, we have to have kids. Well,
they just don't have time for it.
We'll just put them all in boarding school, and we don't need parents anymore. So maybe in that sense, if they're not making them the old-fashioned way, that this is the only way we can come up with.
Or what if there's a war? What if there's the first interstellar war? You're going to need soldiers.
You just need the soldiers? Okay.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of things, right? You can, because yeah, I don't know. It was one of those things where it's just like, yeah, I could see a couple scenarios for which they might need a whole bunch of bodies, and they might need to just keep refreshing things. And I was thinking, well, instead of expanding it and trying to build like, some kind of like, because if you got robots, then you don't really need like, what is it? Kind of a bio robot, if you will. You don't need just 10,000 people there to, be slaves essentially. And of course, that whole aspect of robots, and yeah, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it's fun.
Clones and robots.
Yeah, clones and robots. But
interesting. Yeah. No, I do like the story, and I do like the pace of it, and your use of the chic box. It's one thing we forgot to introduce. We didn't really need to remind everybody what our keywords was. So the Cyrillic stamp, because Russians don't deliver early in the morning. Is that like did you wrote that in, or
no? I was entering more of. I just wanted a foreign element in there, so it's like, stuffing. This excuse me, like
excuse your stuffing. You mean?
Yeah, excuse my stuffing. More of like this is weird. Like like the difference between this is my paycheck coming. This is my paycheck stub. From coming from downtown, huh? Versus this is exotic. This is very clearly from not quote unquote here. Wherever
so the chic box wasn't a good enough giveaway. You had to have a Cyrillic stamp on the chic box.
Correct.
Gotcha.
On the chic. What is it? The chic little murder box.
Yeah, the chic little murder box. I like that. That should be the new title of the book. The chic little murder box.
Yeah, the chic little murder box. But yeah, no, and especially like because I was not sure of how I would do the whole thing, because like there are definitely inconsistencies. Like, why is the box still there in the study, and yet, well, actually, they don't. It's not. When they're transported to the room, the box isn't there. So for all they know, the box is in the car. but like, you know, that would, to me, like what they saw there was like a transport that had gone wrong. Like either somebody in the room that had gotten something was just like, and experienced this horrific death of just literally being vaporized and having, you know, their blood cover the walls and be fused to the wall itself by, like, you know, energy, man.
So then to go back to the main point of the episode, horror. So what was the actual horror element in your story that you feel that you wanted to keep the suspense? Was it the horrible death that you were wondering what was the cause of it, and the purpose of it? What was it? Just curious on your take of the word horror.
I wanted a mystery that was. I wanted to develop, or try to develop, a mystery that was around a bizarre and yet very horrific death that seemed to defy explanation.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Keep that suspense. And then these people, you know, the detective is they're brought back, and then they basically get all those answers answered, but it's not a mistake. It's not, it's not someone getting carried away.
It's not an accident. It's intentional, yeah.
It is 100% intentional. And the idea that BT dubs, you're going to get sacrificed, and there's nothing you can do about it because, well, and it's not even malevolence. It's just a matter of, like...
Well, it is malevolent. Are you kidding?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Malignant or malice or malicious. There we go. That's what I was looking for.
It is malicious. It's horribly malicious.
Yeah, okay. But what I'm trying to say is that it's more bureaucratic than anything else.
It's bureaucratic maliciousness, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, fine. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, and that's what makes it more horrifying, because it is acceptable.
Yeah. And
it's acceptable to the advanced civilization because it's happening to someone inferior. And I think that's the, there's my Crook's takeaway. If I'm going to read into yours, it's the, what's the actual horror that, a state, by viewing themselves as being supreme, can do horrible things because, they know it's best.
Exactly. There you go. And they know how to solve their problems, and that's by sacrificing other people.
And it doesn't matter who gets hurt along the way. So yeah, yep. Definitely. And that is what makes it horrible. Now, I guess my question to you about my story: what's the difference between horror and suspense?
The memory behind it, the memories, and the fact that he freaked out, and the fact that he murdered people and didn't realize it, and he thought he was doing the right thing the entire way through.
Ah, okay.
Because there's no real illogical jumps in his thought process
that you read.
Yeah,
yes,
that I read
from the information. Sorry, from the information that you're presented with.
Yes,
it
exactly.
has to be logical.
Well, I mean, I thought, I can't mind read into a story. So yeah, in the context of the story that we're reading and that we're presented, everything seemed logical. And
that was my goal, because one of the thoughts is who does horrible things. Here's a question that I've always had. People like to get off of a murder charge because they plead insanity.
Yes.
And the big question is that if you intentionally plan and murder somebody, you have mental problems.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very easy jump to make. You could go as far as saying everyone who actually does plan and commit a first-degree murder has a mental problem. I mean, you could easily say that, except inside their own head, they probably can justify it. So
inside their own brains, they think that they are not crazy. Yeah.
And that is kind of where I was going with this story. Is my biggest fear is losing control of yourself and losing control of your ability to make good decisions. So that might be the most horrible thing, is that if I find myself that I have actually done something horrible. Like, that is my biggest fear thing. So writing the story, I wanted to do, and I actually had a lot of different ideas. My original thought that I wanted the turn to be that they weren't actually on a spaceship, that they were buried underground, and that there were rescuers coming to save him, and he was killing.
It's a little bit like Timothy or oh gosh, what's the there was a show. Man, there was a show that was like on Sci-Fi. It was like called it was like Orion or something like that.
And that's why I didn't want to do it, because it sounded a little too tropey. Yeah. And I was trying to come up with other, like, maybe that there were just two groups that were living underground from, the planetary disaster that happened, and they thought that each other were aliens. I was thinking about going down that road, and then, so I decided to do the intergalactic space thing, and I was going to be like, okay, maybe I will write about aliens. And then I couldn't come up with a way and do it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's...
It's like I couldn't take this seriously. Like, alien pirates, okay, all right, no, it's not going to work. So I was thinking, like, the best solution is that he's thinking that there are alien pirates taking over his ship. And then what would be the most plausible explanation that should have been obvious? And then I, gave it back to him, put the ball back on his court by saying that he programmed himself to forget his memories because they were too painful.
It kind of reminds me that whole like aspect of like, when you were talking about the American flag stuff, it reminded me of an episode of The Twilight Zone. Because everything reminds me of The Twilight Zone.
I must have watched a lot of Twilight Zone when I was a kid because like it's buried in the back of my psyche.
Like, do you know the episode that I'm talking about though? It's if I remember correctly, and I think it's an episode of The Twilight Zone. I guess write in if I get it wrong. Be nice, but write in.
Or don't be nice. If you write something really funny, we'll probably read it on the air.
Okay, yeah. More than likely. Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to have mailbag day. But
you can be mean to me because I'm a dick. Be nice to Jay.
Just make it fun. Anyway.
It took the second episode for me to say that, right? Yeah. All right, go for it.
All right, but no, the episode is like there's an old lady and she's living in a house by herself, and there's like a flying saucer that comes in and a little spaceman that's like walking around. And like all this time you think that it's this little old lady being terrorized by just a little spaceman, and you're just like, oh my gosh, and of course it's Twilight Zone. So like at the very end of the episode, she gets to the flying saucer, and it's got a big old USAF on it.
I do not remember this episode.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. I've watched it once, and of course, like I said, it might not be Twilight Zone. It might have been one of the other, like how they had those like little pop sci-fi kind of story shows at the time.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly. Yeah. So no, that stuff is like that's kind of what it reminded me of. So when you were just basically, because when I was like, or when I was reading it and heard the American flag thing, I was like, oh my gosh. That really reminds me of that episode. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what do you think about the way that I ended it?
Yeah.
I was really questioning whether or not I did not know how I wanted to end it until I finished writing it, because I was like, oh, like should I just like let him die in the end? And then like let somebody find his body, and then it's like, well, this man lived for 150 years,
Yeah, but no, just I like the fact of him. I like the idea of him being able to come to terms with the fact that he's done horrible things, and then just go, I'll fix it later. Because again, it's one of those like
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Just like That was great. I really enjoyed that one. That was pretty good.
And I tried to kind of foreshadow a lot of that stuff, because I think part of it is you have to leave the breadcrumbs. You think like, hey, if you spend 10 years trapped with somebody that you love, that's going to be wonderful. And it could be, but what if it's not? And so I wanted to bring that up. And what could be possible is that you plan all of this time with someone, and then all of a sudden the plans go horribly wrong for some other reason.
Oh yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
That was kind of one of the foreshadows. What were some of the other ones? Definitely talking about all the, it seems like the mindless prologue that you were talking about, that was actually an important plot point later on.
Oh yeah, no, It scared me at first, and I was like, "Oh no, oh no, no, no!" But I was like, "Okay, fine."
We did say we're writing bad science fiction.
Yeah, it's true.
It's okay
Yeah.
if it's just all. That's what I'm going to do. One episode, I'm just going to write one of just expository dialogue the entire time,
Just to make me cringe while I read it.
I'm going to think about it.
Have them.
It's
Have
just
them
what's
narrating.
going on.
Have them
What's
narrating and providing expository dialogue for their alarm going off at the front of the story.
Or even better, it's like the entire story takes place over 5 seconds.
Oh gosh, yeah, no.
And it's just the expository dialogue.
Well, there's a short story that's actually kind of written like that, and it's actually interesting. I'll see if I can find it and give it.
There's a couple of them I read.
Well, I don't mean
there was
science fiction. I just mean like over the course of like a 5 seconds. There's like a piece of flash fiction that is like it's a paragraph, but it's a paragraph without sentences, and it's basically a conversation between a mother and a daughter, but you don't hear the daughter. It's just basically the mother talking to the daughter, and it's just there's no punctuation in there, so you don't really know where sentences start and stop. But it's like it goes for a paragraph, and I'll find it for you because it's interesting because it's like
that sounds like 5 years of therapy right there.
basically yes, and it's like that kind of thing because it ends on like it ends on the traditional young older scolding the younger. What do you mean? You're going to be the sort... It was like, I think it was something along the lines of like, what do you mean? You're going to be the sort of woman that the baker doesn't let touch the bread? Or something like that. And it was just like, oh.
What does that mean? Is
I guess
Freudian?
the statement would be that they were not clean or something, or they were, and it's a comment about expectation, obviously, but like at the same time, it's one of those like as reading it, it's just like, oh. Ooh, ugh, that's
Yeah, that sounds like 5 years of therapy summed up in one run-on sentence.
Oh no, but the capitalizations were there, like the punctuation wasn't. So you just read it, and it's literally just one half of a conversation. It's not even like the back and forth.
So like the mom's not letting the daughter get a word in.
Kind of, yes, kind of, but
kind
not,
of.
Yeah. Except for the fact that there are places where there was clearly something in the middle of it because they are responding to questions and then asking questions and then responding to those answers. Very interesting. I'll have to dig it up sometime and if I can find it around here.
Try to do that on a first read.
Oh yeah, there's always that. The last 2 times I've literally thought, I could always do this.
Well, one day I'll deserve it. So, well, I think that might just wrap up our little summation. Let's think about what we want to do next week. I'm debating for next week. I want to try an episode where we're going to have a couple catchphrases.
Ooh, catchphrases.
So
this can be great.
So if you're at home and you're listening to our podcast and you're ready for episode 3, why don't you leave catchphrases that you want us to include in the drawing for next week down in the comments. And if they're really interesting, we'll read them on the air even if we don't randomly choose yours.
Oh, yes. Trust me. We will do a best of at the end of that because why not?
Absolutely. And we'll put it in the pot and we might even use it in future episodes.
Absolutely.
Well, I am Dick.
And I'm Jay. Read poorly.